Come on in, everyone. Come on in because we are here today reviewing the Ready to Love interview with Alonzo and Mojo over on Little Black Book. Ready to Love interview with Alonzo and Mojo over on Little Black Book. What y'all think of it? Those of you that saw it, those of you that didn't see it, definitely should check it out. Kojo's got the interview up. He's got I'm sure he typically drops some smaller clips, but definitely go over there and check it out because it was a good interview. I learned a lot. Question is, did Alonzo learn anything? Like my thumbnail said, us old people have a saying. It says, a hard head makes a soft behind. And I'm not just talking about getting spankings and corporal punishment and all that, because I know that's maybe where it originally came from, but it's still relevant today, even though we don't spank our kids. Most people don't. But a hard head makes a soft behind, because if you don't want to learn through your ears, you typically are going to have to learn just by falling on the ground, hitting your head up against a wall. First of all, I want to say this because I don't know if Alonzo will watch this recap. But Alonzo, if you're watching, you know that Auntie Deborah had you as one of her favorites all season. I like you, Alonzo. I really like you. In fact, before I even get started, come on over here. Come on, Alonzo. Come give Auntie a hug. Give me a hug. Let me hug you. Let me tell you that you is smart, you is kind, and you is intelligent. All three. You are smart, you are kind, and you are intelligent. Because one thing I did learn all this whole interview is that I think Alonzo has a good heart. I said it from the very beginning, even watching all the interviews, not interviews, but the scenes he had on the show with other people, even Koshia, the big debacle with Koshia. And even after watching this interview with Mojo, because I don't even know if I could call it an interview. It started off as an interview. It started off really nice, y'all. It actually did. But somewhere in the middle, it went left. It went left, and next thing you know, thought I was at a Mike Tyson fight. I mean, if Mojo was really there sitting beside Alonzo might have bit his ear. He would have bit his ear. It started off good, and it went left. And once it started going left, I thought, okay, it's going to go left for just a little bit. It's going to get back on course. But no, once it went left, it never came back. It absolutely never came back. And I still stick to what I said in my earlier videos, that I believe that Alonzo has a good heart. Okay, he has a good heart. The only area where I think Alonzo's getting really tripped up is based on his intent and his impact. And I know they had a lot of conversation about testing, and we're going to talk more about what was going on, but I really want Alonzo to hear me when I say I think he has a good heart. I think he has very, very good intentions. It was the first feeling I had of him. But the only area I would want him to try to work on as he moves through life is his impact. And if he can work on impact as opposed to just off of what his intentions are, because I think his intentions are always good. I don't get the sense that he has malicious intent. But that doesn't really matter in the world if you have malicious intent, because in the end, what can matter the most is your impact. You know me, I always like to tell these stories, and I remember a story. It's funny how the story is actually going to be from when I was young. I was very young. I think I might have been, it was before I knew how to swim, and I learned how to swim very early. So I must have only maybe been about, maybe I was 7 or 8. Maybe I wasn't a good swimmer. And I remember being out you guys know I'm from LA. I remember being out at a beach or somewhere with 2 of my older siblings. and we were all out on one of those little blow up rafts. You know what I mean? Where you just put air in it and then you hang on to it and you kick your legs and you're floating around. Now remember, I can't swim, but my older sisters could swim. And I'm out on the raft, and I remember that the waves at the beach started drifting us out a little too far from the shore. We started venturing out too far from the shore. And so my older sisters, because once again, I can't swim at this time. My sisters can't swim. They're not necessarily a strong swimmer. If you guys anything know about the current of the water, it can be strong. So my sisters realized that we're drifting too far from the shore. And so they start, playfully, not like in a panic way. They start going, like they're playfully trying to kick their legs and maneuver this blow up raft back closer to the shore. And I remember as a little girl thinking, wow, do my sisters have this covered? Are they going to be able to get us back to shore? I remember being a bit frightened. And I remember looking at the shore, and I remember seeing my mother on the shoreline, looking at us, trying to figure out, can my sisters handle it? Can my sisters get us to shore? And my mother wasn't a strong swimmer. My father was a strong swimmer. And at the time, I remember looking on the shore for my dad, and I didn't know where my dad had gone. And I saw my mother on the shore, and she's looking at us. She's trying to figure out, are these girls going to get back to shore? And we had a dog. My dog's name was Princess. She was a German Shepherd. And Princess was on the shoreline, and she was going crazy. She hears my sister screaming. She hears me screaming. She can't figure out, are these girls drowning out there in the ocean or what? Princess sees my mother on the shore, probably getting a bit agitated. My father's not around at this time. I don't know where my dad had gone. I think he had gone off to the snack bar to get some snacks or something. So Princess the dog decides she's going to save us. Her intent is to save us. So Princess comes in the water, swims out to where we all are. My sisters are screaming. I know I was panicked. I probably was crying. I was a small girl or young. And Princess decides she's going to save us. And the way that she's going to save us, Princess decides, she's a German Shepherd. She decides she's going to grab the raft. This is what her intent was. She's going to grab the raft and she's going to pull the raft into shore. Princess decided that she's going to come out there and save all of us, 3 girls hanging onto a raft. Well, when Princess comes out to save us and her intent is to grab the raft as a dog, guess what happens? She pops the raft with her teeth. So now we're not only struggling to get into shore, the raft is losing air. And we know what will happen if the raft loses air and I can't swim and my sisters aren't strong swimmers. So the intent of Princess was to save us. But in actuality, what Princess did was she made it worse. Well, around this time, my dad returns and my dad then swims out to where we are. And he's able to, get us all back to shore safely. And then, of course, my sisters get in trouble with my mother, and like hard heads make soft behinds, because my mother had told my sisters don't go out too far. So there you go, hard heads make soft behinds. But the point of the story is that Princess's intent was to save us, but yet even with her best intent, the impact was harmful to us. And I think that's what Kojo was trying to tell Alonzo, but Alonzo didn't get that part. Alonzo didn't get that it's not just about your intent, that you have a good heart, that I know you're out here trying to do good by people. You're trying to help people. You're trying to make people feel better about themselves. Because like he said, he grew up in a house not feeling good about himself. But where the adjustment that Alonzo needs to make, he has to make the adjustment on the impact. And in order to judge impact, how the impact was, whether it was negative or positive, or did it hit just right? You can't go off of your own intent. Because if you only stick to your intent, if we only stick to Princess wanting to save us, and that's where we stop, and then we say, so nothing else matters. Nothing else matters as long as your intent was good. Then what can happen is you can do a lot of damage in the world. And so I think you have to always decide and balance your approach between intent and impact. Everybody knows my channel can be a hard-hitting channel. Everyone knows that my intent, I always talk about, people say, you don't need to keep justifying yourself. I don't need to keep telling people that my intent is good, even though some people may feel that my impact hurts them or harms them. Well, here is one bit of difference I want to say. I agree with them sometimes, but here's the difference in having it saying something on YouTube or saying something amongst people that you're really close with, is that in this YouTube space, people can click off. People can walk away. People can leave me a comment. People don't have to watch my YouTube station. They have options. They have choices. And so, but if you're in a relationship with people in the world in which you live, the physical world in which you live, then what you have is you have a lot of people walking away from you. If you do not care about the impact with the people who are physically close to you, and all you care about is your intent, then you could damage people close to you and those people could walk away. It's quite a bit different from people clicking off on my YouTube channel and deciding, hey, I don't want to listen to Deborah's impact, even though her intent was good, versus someone you love, versus a child or a husband or a wife or a sister or a friend or someone close to you clicking off of you in real life. And what Alonzo has to realize is that if he doesn't give more consideration to not just his intent, but his impact, what he may find happens in his life a lot is that people walk away from him, because people always have a choice to walk away from you. They can sit there and fight with you, or they can walk away from you. But either way, it doesn't become the impact you wanted. Because remember, your intent is to help. Your intent is to do good. And like I said, I believe that with Alonzo, but he's got to start looking at more about what his impact is. Alonzo says that he's got thick skin. And a lot of this sort of jousting that I saw him doing with Kojo, I understand where it came from. Alonzo he's actually from Cali, y'all. He's from Long Beach, Strong Beach. But my suspicion is that Alonzo's from the part of Long Beach next to Compton and Linwood. What you say, Alonzo? Long Beach with the name beach in the name signifies it's near the beach. And we all know that typically cities near the beach or the ocean are high income, high real estate prices. But Long Beach is interesting here in California, in which it is on the beach. So it has a lot of parts of Long Beach that is expensive. It's on the beach. You've got condos on the beach, houses on the beach. You get that full experience of a beach. But Long Beach also spreads out into more of the inner part of Southern California, and it borders two cities that a lot of people know about, which are Compton and Linwood. And when you think about Snoop Dogg was from Linwood. Well, Snoop Dogg is not from the part of Long Beach that's on the beach. Tell you that right now. That's why you get a little bit of a mix in Long Beach. You can get the highfalutin, snooty part, but you can also get that part of Long Beach that borderlines Compton and Linwood. And I'm sure some of you know about Compton all around the world. And I suspect that Alonzo grew up closer on that end. He tells us that he's a middle child. He's wedged in between two girls, an older sister, a younger sister. And then he had a home without a father, or his father. And then he had a strong mother. And he said in his house, they played a lot of Dirty Dozens. Now we know where he gets the jokes from. And you had to be strong and quick-witted to live in his house. You had to have thick skin, because if you weren't able to come with it, you would get eaten alive in that house. And so I suspect that this ability that Alonzo has developed to joust, as I said, with this sort of, Mike Tyson 12 round bout comes from his upbringing. Like I said, he grew up in Long Beach, Compton, Linwood borderline. I'm pretty confident of that. He grew up in a house where he had to fight for his life between a bunch of women. That's a hard spot for a man to grow up in, wedged in between two women plus a female matriarch in the house. As a male, how do you have a different voice? How do you let your opinion come forth when oftentimes your opinion might be drowned out by all the other feminine energy in the room, and also your house is primarily controlled or dominated by a female? When females control homes, mothers control homes over boys, and there's no men of authority in the house, it can have an impact on young boys because they could feel as if they always have to bow down to women, but yet they're resentful of it, because they do have to follow the rules of the mother. The mother is the leader in the house because there's no man showing leadership. And the mother can think differently than the boy because women think differently than men in a lot of areas. And as a young boy, you're taught to do as your mother says, bow down to your mother, and there could be a buildup of resentment. But then you have a boy wedged between two girls. So not only do you have a matriarch mother, you have a big sister, and then you have a little sister, and you're the only boy wedged in between. I see how you could feel lost in that house. I see how you could feel as if you don't have a voice. I could see how you could feel as if your thoughts and opinions aren't important. And then what could happen is you become a bit more forceful in voicing that opinion because sometimes maybe your voice was drowned out. And as you grow older, you're more willing to fight for your voice. I saw a lot of fighting by Alonzo to be heard and to be understood. And one of the things I would say, I always recommend therapy for everyone. I do. And I recommend it for Alonzo because, like I said, I think his heart is good, but his impact can use some work. And he's got to be open to therapy. People learn in all different kind of ways. If anyone has children or you have multiple children, or if you have just people everyone learns differently. There's different styles of learning. In my upbringing, I was the youngest child. So a primarily way that I learned was by listening and watching, because one of the benefits of being the younger child is you can watch what your older siblings do. You can listen to what happened in their life, and you can learn by listening and watching. And it kind of helps you avoid mistakes in life. It even helps you avoid situations in your own household because you can see how your parents reacted to your older sister, and you go, well, I'm not going to go down that road because that didn't end well. So you actually learn a lot by watching. But when you are an older child, you don't have anyone to watch. You're the first, you're the pioneer. Or when you're the only boy, you don't learn a lot by watching because you're the only boy. So you have no other boy in the house to watch. You have no older brother to watch. You have no father to watch. Of how do you navigate? And so as a result, your learning doesn't come from watching or even listening. Your learning comes from you going out into the world, doing it yourself, bumping your head up against the wall, falling on that soft behind. Like I said, a hard head makes a soft behind. Well, I'll say this to Alonzo. I understand how he got here. I truly do understand how he got here. But at this point in life, I'm going to suggest to him he look at a new course for learning. I'm going to suggest at this point he develops a new way of learning. I understand that it has served him well up until now. I understand that learning by doing, learning by depending on himself, learning to depend on his own wisdom, his own gut instinct has gotten him far in life. He seems to be doing well for himself in his career and in life in general. But if you want to rise to another level, and like I said, all my videos are always going to be about elevation, going to the next level. If you want to rise to the next level, you have to learn to listen. Because the only way you learn and you get that incremental growth is you have to learn from other people's experiences. You can't keep learning through your own grit. You can't keep learning through your own actions, because what happens is you accumulate a lot of mistakes learning, right? You accumulate a lot of mistakes learning. This is why I even suggest people who are entrepreneurs, I suggest that they work for a corporation first. I know a lot of people don't want to work for corporations. They want to be entrepreneurs. But I always will say that even though your end result may be you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to learn a business, I always suggest that you work for a company first. Because when you work for a company, you know what you do? You learn on their dime. You make mistakes on their money. If you make a mistake at that corporation, guess who pays for it? That corporation pays for it. You sent out an order wrong accidentally. It was supposed to have been a $5,000 order, and somehow or another you messed up and you sent out a $3,000 order, whatever the case. It cost that company $2,000, but guess what? It didn't cost you $2,000. You see, there's a benefit to learning through on other people's dime or other people's mistakes. So when you are out on your own, you now have learned from those things, and now you don't have to suffer those negative consequences. And that's what life is about. Learn from the mistakes of others in life so that you don't have to fall prey or victim to those same mistakes. And in order to learn from other people, you have to do one thing, and that is you have to be able to listen. You have to be able to listen. And I do see that Alonzo needs a lot of help in learning how to listen. And like I said, you is smart, you is kind, you is important, Alonzo. But my hope for you as an auntie would be you would just learn to listen a little bit more. Now, I ask myself, why doesn't Alonzo listen now? I see it. In my mind, I see where he's gotten to this point. And the other part that I see about that sometimes has Alonzo tuning out to advice or constructive criticism is it feels like rejection to him. It feels like rejection. You know, sometimes constructive criticism can feel like rejection to a person who's had a lot of rejection in their life. And Alonzo spent a very good portion of the first part of the interview detailing out to all of us the amount of rejection he had in his life. There was a lot of rejection in his home from his mother in terms of his feelings and emotions. There was rejection from his father. We all heard that horrible story on the Radio Love episode where he said to, I think it was the father, the man must have been the father of maybe the younger sister or the older sister, but they must have different fathers. And so Alonzo called that other man dad, and that dad corrected him and says, "I'm not your daddy. Don't ever call me that." It was horrific, absolutely horrific. But that is a form of rejection. Like I remember the story of my dog, Princess. He remembers that story here today, and he's 35 years old. And that story probably happened when he was probably a teenager. So things like that, those marks of rejection, they don't go away just because time passes. They're indelibly put in your head. And what Alonzo talks about is, it's never been the issue with Alonzo not being able to express his thoughts. A lot of people have walls around them. They're closed off. They don't share their emotions or their deep emotions. That's not Alonzo's problem. Alonzo has an ability to share his emotions. He absolutely does. And he's not a person where you would have to draw out his emotions. He's pretty transparent with them as long as you're willing to listen to them. But where he does go back inward is if he feels as if you are rejecting him. And I believe that rejection also can come from if you're giving him criticism. So, and even if it's constructive criticism. So when he does start therapy, because I do want him to go to therapy, that therapist is going to have to be careful. He or she is probably going to have to spend a lot of time just listening to Alonzo, gaining his trust, just listening to him, making him feel accepted, making him feel cared for, making him feel understood. Because if you come too soon with the constructive criticism, he won't hear you. He won't hear you because he won't deem you as a safe space. There was a lot of talk in this interview about testing people, testing. And one of the things that Alonzo talked about was, and he even talked about on the show, how he likes to maybe poke people or put them in positions to see how they're going to act under pressure, he wants to see that side of them that's not the so good side of them. A lot of us, we have these relationships, right? And we always know the honeymoon stage is the first 2-3 months of a relationship. The first 2 or 3 months of a relationship, everybody is on their toes. Everyone is showing their good side, right? We're not seeing any bads of people. But we all know once you get past the honeymoon stage, after the 3 or 4 months, that's when we start to see the other parts of people, maybe the red flags or the parts that they need to work on. And so what Alonzo kept talking about was sometimes he likes to escalate that process. Sometimes he wants to get to that stuff sooner than later. He doesn't want to just to have it play out. He says, hey, why do I need to wait 4 months to be able to see how you're going to behave under pressure? Why do I need to wait so long? So what I'll do is I may create some situations so that I see that side of you sooner, so I get this information sooner. There was a lot of going back and forth over that. I think Kojo was trying to tell him that's not loving, that's not caring, that's manipulative. And what Alonzo was focusing on, well, it is loving because my intent is to get to know that person better, so that by knowing that person better, that person will never have to get to that space again. So if you listen to what Alonzo is saying, my intent is to put you in a situation whereby I might be able to see where your vulnerable spots are, what might make you angry, what might make you sad, what might scare you. Because what my intent is that if I can never get you there, if I can never do anything that may make you angry or upset or bring that negative part of you, we can avoid it. So what he says is, I don't want to wait 4 months for that moment to come naturally, because we all know the moment is going to come naturally. It's going to come naturally. Everyone is going to have an argument. Every couple, they're going to have a disagreement. Everyone's going to get angry. Everyone's going to have all of these sort of negative emotions. That what Alonzo is saying is, I want to give a gift to you, because he's looking at himself from his intent. My intent is, let's go in here and do a forensic on you, right? Let's go in here and discover these areas about you that might be your vulnerable spots, whereby you might crack a little bit, or you might have a negative emotion. You might feel sad. You might feel angry. And then by me knowing those sensitive spots of you, what I can do is I can then adjust myself so that we never get there. That's his intent. His intent, what he was trying to narrow down was, I really am a loving person. I'm really trying to help. But his method of helping doesn't have the impact that he wants it to have. It's the same thing as my dog, Princess. My dog wanted to come and save us. She did not want us to drown. But by her coming out to save us, prior to my father getting there to save us, she actually almost drowned us. You see, because there were plenty of people around that could have saved us. There's a lifeguard. There's my father. There are other people on the shore. But my dog, Princess, said, no, I'm going to save these girls. And so she decided to come out to the water to save us. But in the process of saving us, she almost drowned us. So what would you think would happen the next time? Let's say we were in that situation again, and my dog, Princess, sees us out in the water screaming and yelling. More than likely, what my mother would do is she would hold our dog, Princess, back. She would say, no. My dog would want to go out and save us. But more than likely, my mother would hold Princess and say, don't you go out there and save the girls, because you may drown her. I'll send their father. You see? And so what Alonzo needs to learn is that even though he may have good intent, if his impact becomes negative to people, people will hold him back. People will push him away. And what that will create in his life is a lot of rejection. And what I said before is that for Alonzo, constructive criticism can feel like rejection. And so imagine what it feels like when your intent is to help, when your intent is to save, when your intent is to make someone better, but yet they push you away and you feel rejected. And that's why I want Alonzo to get some help, to get some therapy, because he's got to not only correct this about himself, he's got to also understand how he got here and why he's here. And what he's got to understand is not take it like he's the blame for it. Some of these characteristics, traits of us, they come from our childhood. We were not even a willing participant in it. It's just the environment that was around us that created us, and we became a product of our environment. So a lot of times to get help in therapy, you almost have to detach yourself apart from how you got here. Don't always feel like it's your fault that you're here, because if you keep feeling blamed for it, it can make you not lean into the growth. It can make you not lean into growing. But if you detach yourself from how you got here and say, hey, I did get here, but it's not all of my doing. But where you will have to suffer the blame is if you don't start correcting those things from the point of knowing. Ignorance is bliss. See, when you're ignorant of things, you don't have to do anything because you don't know anything. But once you start to learn how you got a certain place, now it becomes your responsibility to get yourself from there to the next level. And that's what I'm talking about, elevation. We can't stay stuck in the mode of blaming parents or our childhood. At some point in time, part of adulthood is saying, hey, these things were done to me. It's time to elevate. And what I want for Alonzo is he's not in the mode of blaming anyone, but he isn't in the mode of recognizing how he got here. He needs some help from someone helping sit down and explain, this is what I see. I don't want you to look at it as me rejecting you, but what I want you to see is that you didn't get here on your own, okay? And it was not the intent of people in your life to get you here, right? It wasn't the intent of your mother or your sister or even your father who left or abandoned you. It wasn't necessarily their intent, but this is where you are. This is the impact of it. And now from the impact of it, it's going to be your responsibility to take that, get the help you need in order to go to the new level. And in order to get that help, you're going to have to listen. You can't keep doing everything out here on your own, okay? And you don't become as useful to other people when you're not growing. If you try to grow simply off of your own understanding, off of your own experience, you may grow, but you will grow very, very, very slowly. You will grow slowly. I know we had a lot of conversations about this season about we felt Alonzo was immature. I was one of those people. I said, Alonzo has a good heart, but there's some immaturity to him. And part of, I see a little bit of where the immaturity is coming from is the lack of ability to listen. Because part of emotional intelligence, look it up. I'm not just saying this. Look up the definition of emotional intelligence. And part of emotional intelligence is the ability to listen to thoughts and viewpoints of others. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone, but you have to have the ability to sit and listen and consider the thoughts. Alonzo struggles with that. And so as a result, his learning will not come from others because he doesn't listen to others. His learning is going to come from hitting his head on the wall, from falling down the ground. It's going to all come from trial and error. And that's going to be a very, very slow learning process. So after a while, a person who learns by doing, their learning will be much slower than a person who learns from a variety of ways, by learning, by listening. You see, they're doubling. The person who learns by doing and listening, they've got two ways of learning. Alonzo's learning is by doing only. His trajectory is going to be shortened, slower. So after a while, guess what happens when you're neck and neck with a person the same age, and the only way you're learning is by doing, but the other person is learning by doing, but listening and getting wise advice and wise counsel. They're going to start to outpace you. So later on in life, when Alonzo is 38 and he meets another 38-year-old, he's going to seem immature because other people have learned more because they've broadened their methods of learning. Alonzo can catch up. When we say he's immature, he can catch up. But the way that he'll have to catch up is he's going to have to start listening, and he's going to have to stop trying to grow through his own might. And that's a marker of emotional intelligence. Like I said, he is smart, he is kind, he is intelligent, but there is a lot of room for growth for Alonzo. Another part where I learned a lot with Alonzo was this way that he loves ladies. You know, we saw him this season and he was doing a lot of, we thought he was immature with the ladies. Can he be serious? A lot of silliness going on. And then when you saw him in this interview with Mojo, you were able to see this more serious side of Alonzo. And he said, yeah, you know, in the season, they showed all my silliness, but they didn't show me being serious. And I'm a very serious person. And you saw that serious side of Alonzo and Mojo. In fact, there was not too much foolery going on. There weren't even a lot of jokes going on. And in fact, it was weird because I was like, I don't know. I kind of want the silly Alonzo to come back. I want the Alonzo to come back with the hair bonnet, because this part of Alonzo where he's hard-headed and he wants to debate and he don't want to listen. I'd rather hear some jokes. I'd rather laugh. You see what I'm saying? So you also can understand these two different parts of Alonzo. The silly side of Alonzo that puts you at ease, that maybe makes you want to laugh, because sometimes when this other part of Alonzo comes, the one that wants to debate and the one that wants to argue and the one that has a hard head, I kind of want to throw him away and reject him and bring me back the silly one. If I got to choose between the one that wants to fuss and fight and argue versus the one that wants to dance and wear a head bonnet, bring on the hair bonnets. Bring on the hair bonnets. But I think another interesting part that he talked about, he kept bringing up this woman. Her name was Robin. Robin was Alonzo's first love in high school. It was the woman that they shared an intimate moment. Was the first woman he was intimate with. He lost his virginity with, or I don't know, we shouldn't call it lost, because you know where it went. You just gave it away. You gave it away. And I don't know if it was her first time too. That's neither here nor there, but that was his first love. And to be honest with you, I almost kind of feel like Alonzo is chasing the love of Robin, you know, because he was asked, okay, Robin was your first love, but you know, that was back, you was 17, 18 years old. You now 35, 36, it's been 18 years. You haven't had a love after Robin, not one you can speak of. No, this Robin at the time was a young girl, made a big mark on Alonzo. And here's the thing, the breakup with Robin didn't happen naturally. It didn't happen naturally. Remember, I keep talking about this idea of how relationships can grow naturally, that eventually you will see the red flags, but you don't have to escalate the process. You don't have to create moments so that they arise. Well, with Robin, the moment of a natural breakup, it kind of ended in a bad way, because what happened was Alonzo and Robin were being intimate and they got caught by Robin's mother, and Alonzo was banned from Robin. He couldn't see her anymore. There was distance between them. At this point, he was living in Virginia. He moved from Long Beach to Virginia. But let me tell you, he went to Long Beach. He went to Virginia with a Long Beach mindset, because your formative years are really all the way up until maybe you're about 14 or 15. That's a lot of where your personality is formed. And so I think he went to Virginia when he was in high school. So he had a lot of formative years in Long Beach, Strong Beach, next to Compton and Linwood. And so he was dating a young girl in Virginia, I guess is where he was, and she lived on the other side of town. Sounds like there might have been some income disparity, maybe some class distinction between the two. And so he ended up being barred from being with Robin. He couldn't see her, couldn't touch her, couldn't see her. It was cut off. And so what happened is Robin remains almost like a martyr, right? because he was in love with this girl. It was his first love. It was his first intimate moment. Is where he learned a lot about his body. It's where he learned how he likes to be loved, right? How, maybe he was sweet with Robin. Robin might have been sweet with him. Maybe Robin was the first woman where he felt accepted, where he could be silly with. Remember, they're in high school, and I imagine that in high school, Alonzo was probably silly. He was silly. He probably was able to get class clown. He told jokes. And all these things are wonderful in high school, right? Class clown, jokey, funny. These are all things you love in a mate when you're in high school because you're young. You just want to have fun. You want to be silly. And Alonzo is in love with Robin during these days. And remember, this becomes his model or martyr relationship. And he doesn't really have any model thereafter of what a relationship should look like. So here he is now at 36, still dating women like he dated Robin, with jokes and silliness and fun and laughter. But the problem goes back to what I talked to you about growth, right? Alonzo might think that if he met Robin today, he could fall back in love with Robin because he's thinking Robin is still the 18-year-old, the 17-year-old in high school. We were in love then. We got along fine then. We had the best relationship. The only reason we're not together now is because the parents broke us up. We didn't break up because we didn't get along or that I was doing something wrong. Nope, I did everything right. Robin did everything right. So we aren't together, not because of me and Robin, but because of people broke us up. So now, if I'm now a 36-year-old man who hasn't grown past 17 relationship-wise, what I'm out here trying to do is duplicate the relationship that I had with Robin. Because remember, that's the best relationship I ever had. That's the one where I was in love. That's the one where I felt accepted and not rejected, when I wasn't criticized, right? When I loved on her and she loved on me. That's the relationship I want. So what I'm going to do now at 36 is I'm going to keep trying to recreate that Robin relationship. Well, guess what? Even Robin ain't 18 no more. If you met Robin today, Alonzo, she would not be the same woman. Robin is 36. So you can't keep dating at 36 like you dated Robin when she was 18. He idolizes his relationship with Robin. Robin is a martyr in his head. He's not growing. And like I said, when you're not willing to learn by growing and listening and watching, and your only learning comes from doing, guess what happens? You get stuck. You see, Alonzo hasn't had significant enough relationships past Robin. And remember, the way he learns is by doing. So if he hasn't had any relationships to do it in, guess what? He's not learning. He's still trying to have a relationship with a 36-year-old woman like he had one with Robin at 18. His intent is good. His intent is to love on women the way he loved on Robin. His intent is to have a woman love on him the way Robin loved on him. But his impact don't hit on a 36-year-old woman like his impact hit on Robin when she was 17. See, he's not even learning and growing in his love for a woman or how to love a woman. He's got to learn how to love a woman at 36, not how to love a woman at 38. He's out here with the same old tricks that he had when he was 18, but the women have grown up. See, I told you that you start off here, but if your learning only comes from experience, you gain experience slowly. But when your learning comes from experience plus listening to others, taking advice, you will grow faster. Alonzo is getting left behind. He's getting left behind, not only in the dating world, he can also get behind left in his career. You see, Alonzo told us he's a contractor business world. And what I know about the entrepreneurial world, because I come from it, is that a lot of entrepreneurs, they went straight from high school to the entrepreneurial world. Because one of the things they didn't want to do is they didn't want to go through the structure of college and learning in this sort of methodical way, right? They didn't want to have to listen to professors. They wanted to go out into the world, be an entrepreneur, learn on their own. That's fine. Nothing's wrong with it. A lot of people are successful that way, right? But also, like I told you, you've got to learn from mistakes. You've got to learn. There used to be a time where there were things called apprenticeships, where you actually learned from people in the trades, and then you eventually launched your own business. But when you go straight from high school to doing your own thing, you miss out on some of that structured learning that college can give you, that maybe an apprenticeship can give you if you're in a trade business. And I think what Alonzo has done his whole life is he's learned by doing. He hasn't had a lot of experience learning by watching, because remember, he doesn't have the models in his home, in his upbringing. He has a lot of sisters and he has a mother. He doesn't have a father, so it's hard to learn by watching. And then he hasn't learned by listening, because what he learned in his household was that he's got to stand up for himself more. He's the only boy. He's wedged between two women. He's got to talk. You got to talk. He's got to assert himself. And like he said, there was a lot of dirty dozens being played. So there was a lot of rejection going on. A lot of rejection. Alonzo's situation is complicated. Very, very complicated. But it doesn't mean that he can't get better. It doesn't mean he can't grow. But in order for him to get better and grow, he's got to learn to listen. But I still go back to say what I said is he's got a good heart. I like his intent. I like it a lot. Because let me tell you something. It's hard to change a person with a nasty heart, with a mean spirit, mean and nastiness. When there's meanness and nastiness on the center of people, it's hard to change that. That's what's harder. I'd rather deal with an Alonzo who has a sweet core, a nice core, and good intent, and help him with his methods so that he has the impact in the world he wants to have, than trying to change a nasty, mean-spirited heart of a person. And that's what I always said from the very beginning with Alonzo, that Alonzo has a lot of negatives. He does. But through some help, I think Alonzo can get better, because I think he has a good core. I think his intent is good, but his methods aren't always the best methods. And as a result, his impact isn't really what he wants. And what he should look at this as, that it really is for his benefit. Because if you are a person out in the world and you want to spread good joy and good cheer, and you want to help all these people, then it behooves you to listen to a little bit of constructive criticism on your methods. Because by listening to that constructive criticism, you can have a bigger impact in the world. Because by having a bigger impact means more people will receive your message. You know what I'm saying? Because if you have gifts to give, and Alonzo looks at himself as this a person who wants to give to people, you have to have gifts that people want to receive. You can't have a gift that no one wants. Because if you have gifts, Alonzo, if you're listening to me, that no one wants, then you're not a giver. Because to be a giver, you got to have a person who wants to receive it from you, right? If I go out into the world and I buy a whole bunch of stuff and I say, hey, I bought all these Christmas gifts. But if I get to go and say, hey, I got a Christmas gift for you, a Christmas gift for you. If everybody says, I don't want any of your gifts, then I'm just a woman sitting home with a lot of stuff around me. I'm not a giver. I'm not a giver if nobody wants what I have to give. Alonzo, you've got to find more people who want to receive what you're here to give. And in order for people to want to receive what you're giving, they have to feel good about what you're giving them. They have to want it. And what I think Kojo was trying to tell Alonzo was that when you give this gift of trying to get to know a woman through these methods you use, it doesn't feel like a gift to the woman. It doesn't feel like a gift to a lot of people. So as a result, they're going to reject your gift. They're going to reject you. And then that's going to trigger you, Alonzo, because we all know that rejection is a trigger point for you. It is a trigger point. So in a lot of ways, you're creating this cycle in your life where you're trying to give, but you're trying to give in a manner in which the person doesn't want to receive it. Therefore, your impact isn't the impact you want. Your impact is to give to that person when actually that person feels attacked or doesn't feel loved. And as a result, that person rejects you. And then guess what happens? You feel rejected. And once Alonzo feels rejected, that's when the nasty part of Alonzo comes out. He said it. He said he starts at this place of talking and opening up and sharing his feelings. But if you don't understand his feelings, if you don't understand his intent, if you don't understand where he's going from, he goes to the nasty place. And that's where we got into the WWE bout with Kojo, because the interview started off real well, y'all. It started off really good. It was like a 3-hour interview. It took me a while to listen to it. That's why I'm here late. It took me a while. I had to listen to it over the course of several days. But it started off a really good interview. Cordial, because in the beginning, Kojo was listening. In the beginning, Kojo was just understanding him. In the beginning, Kojo was just letting him talk and express himself. And Alonzo was open. He's able to express himself. But once the interview turned to Kojo trying to give him some brotherly advice, or maybe trying to share some things in which Kojo saw in Alonzo, just as I'm doing here, that constructive criticism felt like rejection to Alonzo. And like I said, and like he said, once he feels rejected, he goes from sharing and opening up to fighting back. That's that Long Beach. That's that Compton. That's that Linwood. Once he's rejected, once you're telling him about himself, once you're giving him constructive criticism, now he feels rejected. And his approach to being rejected is to come back and debate you and to argue with you and to not listen to you. And that's where the interview ended. That's where the last whole half of the interview left. And that's why I say anyone who's going to eventually help Alonzo, when Alonzo looks for a therapist, that therapist is going to have to spend a lot of time initially just listening to Alonzo to gain his trust. So Alonzo feels that this person really understands him, really understands his intent. Because in the short time that Kojo had, he wouldn't have had enough time to make Alonzo feel safe enough that Alonzo didn't go on the defense. It's just not enough time. It's not enough time. Alonzo needs a lot of time for his intent to be understood, even when his impact is wrong. Even when it's wrong. And that's a lot to ask from a person who is your mate, Alonzo, because what you're asking them to do is, I've got to suffer through all this bad impact that you're doing just so you don't feel rejected, but I got to keep taking your blows, right? You say you want me to open up to you. You say that you want me to show my vulnerable side so you can help me more. But in order for you to help me, what you're telling me is I got to brace and take all your punches. No, I'm not going to sit here and take all the punches of your bad impact so that you can get to the core of me, so that you can now help me, because that means I have to suffer before I'm loved by you. You see what you're setting up for me, Alonzo? You're telling me I got to suffer through you testing me. I know you don't like the word, but you getting to my core, I got to suffer through you opening me up, right? I got to suffer all these negative emotions so that you can get to the heart of the matter, so then you can help me and then I'll feel better. Well, you see, that's kind of what was going on with you and Kojo. He was trying to open you up and get to you so he could help you. How did it feel, Alonzo? How did it feel to get opened up before you were ready to be opened up? How did it feel to be opened up before you and Kojo had enough of a level of trust that you knew that Kojo was coming from a good intent? Because Kojo too was coming from a good intent. He was coming from a good place. We know that about Kojo, that he's coming from a good place. But how was the impact? How did that impact feel, Alonzo? How did the impact of Kojo feel on you, of someone opening you up sooner than you wanted to be opened up? It didn't feel good, did it? It put you on the defense. It made you defend your position more. And that's what I'm telling you. That's how people feel when they're getting to know you, Alonzo. Your intent is good. Your intent is to open up so that you can help, so you can do good. But that opening up, that prying open of people doesn't feel good. And in the real world, a woman would walk away from you. She's not going to let you sit there and open you up. In a real world, you probably would have walked away from Kojo past this interview. And then when they walk away, guess what it feels like? Rejection. So if you want to do better, Alonzo, if you want to have the ability to get to know a woman better, you've got to stop prying her open. Just like you didn't like to be pried open by Kojo, you didn't like the way that felt. That's how a woman feels. That's how a woman feels. You've got to learn how to let a relationship progress more naturally, not forcibly, not trying to open up someone before it's time, before you've built up that level of trust with that woman. You can't ask questions like choked or spanked with a woman that you don't know, because you haven't learned, you haven't built up trust. When you come to a woman you don't know and you ask her choked or spanked, you're prying her open. You're forcing her open. It doesn't feel good. No one wants to be forced open. I don't know you like that. If my husband comes to me and asks me spanked or choked, it don't feel like nothing. It's a joke. We laugh and we having a good time, But a stranger I've only known or ready to love for a week asking me that question, no, not at all. Your intent might have been good, but your impact was not good. I can see how Alonzo and Patrice didn't make it. I don't think they made it, and I can see not, because remember how Alonzo showed up on the show. He showed up on the show initially as a silly person, but he was open. That's where Alonzo starts all relationships. Silly and open, the good parts, the fun parts. But the minute he starts to feel any bit of rejection, we know the nasty part of Alonzo comes back. We know that Alonzo doesn't want to listen. We know Alonzo's a hard head. And what I know about Patrice is a Captain Saberho. Patrice probably thought Alonzo was a softie, that she could roll over him, that she could control him, because I know what Patrice likes. Patrice is domineering. She's strong. She likes men who are wounded. And Alonzo is wounded, but he's hard-headed. He doesn't listen. I imagine at some point in time, if Alonzo and Patrice did date in the outside world, that Patrice probably tried to start telling Alonzo a thing or two, and the nasty part of Alonzo came out. We don't know what's going to go on with this reunion. We hear the snippet of Patrice saying Alonzo had a bunch of women. I could see it, because let me tell you something. Patrice likes to save. Patrice likes to be in charge. And no one's going to be in charge of Alonzo. No one. He's a hard head. No one's going to run him. So Patrice might have read him wrong. And then when Patrice started rejecting Alonzo, because she did have forms of rejection with Alonzo, we saw what she was doing with Chaz. Then what that might provoke is the nasty side of Alonzo. Because I know that when Alonzo starts to feel rejected, the nasty part is going to come out. When Alonzo saw that stuff that went on with Chaz, he tried to say he didn't care. He cared. He saw it. He spoke up about it. He told her, hey, why were you giving so much attention to Chaz? And I'm sitting over here eating crawfish by myself. And what Patrice said was Chaz needed her because she's a Captain Saberho. And what she started to recognize in Alonzo was that Alonzo didn't need her in that way. Alonzo appears as if he needs a mother. Alonzo appears if he needed someone to tell him what to do. But once Patrice started to get to know Alonzo, she probably started to recognize what I saw in this interview is Alonzo doesn't listen. He doesn't listen. He didn't want a mother. He doesn't want a mother. Not at all. He doesn't want a mother. He doesn't want anyone telling him what to do. And Patrice realized that what she likes to do wasn't going to work with Alonzo. So she probably, just like we saw, started veering and drifting off to another man, and then that becomes a form of rejection. Because here you have Patrice going and attaching to Alonzo, but as she gets to know Alonzo and she realizes he isn't all fun and games, he isn't all the happy-go-lucky with the bonnet. Once you get to know him and you start to maybe tell him a few things and he starts to feel rejected by you, you're going to start to see the nasty side of Alonzo. And then what happens is, what did Patrice start doing? She started going over there and barking up the tree of Chaz. And that became further rejection from Patrice. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alonzo got on some get back with Patrice. Alonzo knew what was going on. Alonzo knew that Patrice, in a way, was rejecting him because she was looking at Chaz so late in the process. And Alonzo knew what that was. He knew it was a form of rejection. And so what happened after the show was over, he rejected her. He got her back. That's the pattern of Alonzo. In the beginning, he's going to be sweet. He's going to be kind. He's going to open up. He's going to give you roses. He's going to bring you chocolates. He's going to keep you laughing. He's going to do all that. But the minute you say anything, the minute you have any constructive criticism, the minute you tell him, hey, the way you're trying to love me doesn't feel good. I know it's your intent to love me, but this prying of me open, this pushing me too soon, too fast doesn't feel good. And I'm not feeling good about this. The minute you start barking back on him about that, he's going to feel rejected. And once he feels rejected, it's all downhill from there. Just like this interview was downhill. The minute Kojo started prying him open, the minute Kojo tried to tell him anything about himself, give him any kind of advice, any constructive criticism, it was downhill. Downhill. We was down in the gutter. By the time this interview was over, like I said, Mike Tyson heavyweight championship fight. I was like, Alonzo gonna bite the ear Kojo. But anyway, that's it, y'all. That's how the interview went. It was interesting to watch. Be sure to go check it out if you haven't watched it. But we will see. This reunion is coming up. We'll see how it all shakes out. And I will see you guys for the recap on Saturday after the reunion. Talk to you later. Bye.